Welcome, you guys. It's our first meeting for the in a long time, and, for the SNI Youth Woodlands Club, Conservation Club. Uh, Basically, this club was started to give back to the youth, but also bring back some teachings. Um, I guess, really to instill some teachings in the youth for conservation, stewardship, land stewardship, um, and just building future woodsmen, and just building on knowledge um, for years to come, really, on the land. And this is something that we just got started last year in March, and when everything happened with the lockdown, COVID-19, we were just then getting off the ground. So now this is something. Bear with us. I know this is the start of it, but it's a start. So today, since the sap is running, we're going to be going over the maple portion, the tapping hands-on, more so just tree ID, what to look for, identification on I guess the difference between these maples, sugar maples, and other maples that you might find in the woods. Like right here, this is actually a sugar maple. This is something to it. I guess everybody has a different teaching that comes with it. And if anybody has anything else that they want to add with anything that we're going over, feel free, because I'm a firm believer in it's going to take all of us to learn this stuff, and everybody coming together to make sure that these teachings go on. So just thankful for the opportunity. Again, my name is Jonathan Gill. I work for Seneca Nation Fish and Wildlife. My Ngoi name is Ngoi, which translates to "he has a good mind" or "he is witty." This is Jordan.cooke. Sure, kids will know him. He's cool. He'll be helping out as well. Jordan.cooke and Daniel. I'm sure everybody knows these two, so they'll be helping out with this. If you guys have any questions, ask away, and we'll answer them the best we can. So, anybody have any questions? Anything? No? Can you guys hear me? Yeah. If I gotta try not to yell. I don't want to be hollering at you guys, but I'm just kidding. But I'll just speak louder. That's all if I have to. So.
I think you could probably take your mask off because you're far enough away from us. Yeah. Okay.
A little clear. So yeah, this is we're looking at here is a sugar maple. You can definitely tell by a lot of the buds. Break down the buds a little bit.
Yeah. So this is a sugar maple. Its species name is Acer saccharum. That's like a species identification name. So if you want to look up information on the internet, look up Acer saccharum. So that's a root word to like sucrose, right? To sugar. The sugar maple. And one of the ways to easily identify it without leaves is it has this grayish to blackish bark that's slightly furrowed, they call it, as opposed to a couple of our trees right behind you that have those deeper, thicker furrows, the splitting or scaling of the bark. That can help you to identify it. And then you get closer, you'll see a lot of these stems are grayish, and as you get towards the end, they'll turn reddish, or reddish brownish, and the buds on here will be like this really dark red, dark maroon. So it starts from gray and gets to red towards the ends of the branches. In the springtime, when it gets further into spring, you know what a classic maple leaf looks like. Unfortunately, I can't find it right now.
It's on the cups at Tim Hortons.
Yeah. Right. So I think you're pretty familiar with what maple leaves look like. But what we wanted to make sure to share with you today was not just that, we can harvest maple sap, process it into syrup, and use it, and that it's, we really wanted to convey the importance of the cultural aspect, the spiritual aspect of our connection and our reliance in our past to what the Wata provides us. Our oral history tells us that it's one of the first medicines. What our people would do in the spring is, of course, harvest the sap and drink the sap to cleanse our bodies of the toxins that would have accumulated after all the winter months indoors, eating all the dried, preserved foods. So in order to sort of detoxify ourselves, it was a ritual practice to collect the sap and drink it to help cleanse our bodies and to get ourselves ready for the springtime and to refreshen us. And so again, we still carry it on today, as we just did last week in the second part of our maple ceremony at the Longhouse. And as you're probably familiar, the process of making syrup is really tedious and laborsome. We need to tap the tree in a certain place at a certain time of year on a certain location. Make sure to work and collect the sap before it spoils in the bucket and process it or boil it down to sap or down to syrup. And from there, we can boil it even further and turn it into maple sugar, which is the way we would store it long term over the course of the year. So not only do we just make syrup and have it, but we would process it all the way down to maple sugar and then store that long term in our cold storage areas in our old villages. And then you had sugar, a natural sweetener, throughout the entire year. So of course we have stories about why it's such a laborious process, and you'll see that in the packet if you have it. It was really about us making the commitment to provide the labor that it would take to carve the natural spiles out of wood and to tap the tree and to get up early and collect and then to boil it. That process is pretty easy nowadays because we have all kinds of high technology tubing and plastic bags and pumps that can suck the sap right out of the trees and put it into a giant stainless steel container. But a long time ago, we of course had to collect it in little bark bowls and containers and clay pots. And then we would take that sap, put it into a long trough similar to like a dugout canoe, and we would boil it by putting hot rocks into it to slowly steam out the water and changing those rocks out until we finally got down to syrup and sugar. So you can imagine what kind of process that would be of keeping those fires going, exchanging the hot rocks, collecting the sap, and watching it over the course of the spring. You imagine it'd be a 24-hour process. And again, trying to make enough to provide the entire village for the entire year. And of course, what we do today is pretty simple. We have all the technology, so sometimes it removes us from the idea of the amount of work and labor we put into processing and accessing what the Wata provides for us. And we kind of can lose that appreciation. So what we were going to do was just show you a simplest example of what most of our people did. One form of how they would process it and harvest it and process it with what they call a spile or a little metal tat, the bucket that would sit and collect. And at any point, really, I think after we tap it today, you could swing by and come and check and look at the bucket, and you'll see it's full. And sometimes when you tap a tree, you'll see how quickly that sap will start pouring out and dripping out. So within a few hours, that bucket could be full. And the kind of weather that we look for is exactly like what we have within this stretch of time between February and March. We want cold nights that freeze the tree and kind of shock it back into producing sap to wake up in the daytime. Then we want warm days above freezing that activate the tree to actually push that sap through the layers of the bark. We want to put the taps on the southern side of the tree so that they get the sun throughout the day to make sure that the sap runs the fastest. If we were to put it on the northern side, the shade of the tree itself might cause the sap to slow, so it wouldn't be as fast. There's a lot of little things they tell you about where to put it in the tree, but you can look at sort of the grain of the tree, and you'll see where there's knots under the bark where branches may have broken off in its earlier days. And you want to try not to put it there because the grain of the wood in the bark is so twisted, you're not going to get very much sap out of it. You want to try to find a spot where the grain of the wood is straight, so it kind of captures that path. It kind of cuts into that pathway and comes right out. Trying trying to think if there's anything else I'm forgetting.
I guess one thing, like with the, going back kind of a little bit to the tree ID, with these sugar maples, I found compared to the other maples that we have in this area, if you put your hand on it, press on it, you'll find that these trees dig back. The other maples that we have, they tend to crumble. It's like the bark isn't as tough as these ones. And that's one thing I found is that if you push on it and it digs, then that's how you can also tell too, sugar maple. Once you've located like the leaves, different types of leaves, so if you press on it with your hand, it'll dig. And
Like you kind of feel that the bark dig back into your hand.
yeah,
Sometimes when you push on some trees and their bark, you'll feel it bend or push or break right off. You want to feel it kind of poke back into your hand. Like you feel set coming outside the tree right here.
come on there.
Yeah. And Zanyo, am I forgetting anything? Anything you want to add? Otherwise, we'll get right into tapping the tree. You can check it out, and then maybe we can sample some.
Oh yeah, so there's a story about how maple came to be, and in that story they say that it was actually syrup that came out of the tree first, but then like Jordan said, I guess we didn't appreciate it, or there needed to be some labor to it, so then we had to boil it. And there's kind of like a funny story of how it came to be. The woman thought it was water, but it was sap, and so she made a sweet stew. And I also want to mention that a long time ago, our men used hatchets to cut into the tree, but today we're going to use a drill.
But yeah, like a long time ago, they would have carved a notch into the side of the tree at an angle, like a slash, and that would have helped to actually gather a whole bunch of sap and help it flow out better, as opposed to just a little hole. So you could put one bucket on a tree and collect sap on a pretty quicker basis, because now you're harvesting sap from a whole like bunch of like little sap tubes inside the bark, inside the wood, right? As opposed to just one little hole. But nowadays we don't want to do as much damage to a tree. We understand tree conservation a little bit better. We don't want to damage trees that much and potentially kill them. So, we moved to just using a little drill and a spile to harvest the sap. But they would have carved that large slash and used like a little wooden tube carved out of shoe mat. They would have jabbed that into the end, and that would have helped create like a spigot or a faucet to drop the sap right into like a bowl or a clay pot, which they could then gather and just exchange a lot quicker. Right.
So let's get to
Any other
tapping.
questions? Or anybody have anything to add that they might know about maple sugaring process?
So, you guys change the location of the hole every year. So it basically, after you drill into the tree, it will pretty much heal itself, and it wouldn't be able to reuse it.
You'd have to pick a new spot every year. Yeah, it'll heal itself over the course of the rest of the year afterwards. But that's part of what we know about the conservancy process now, is that process actually helps the tree maintain its health throughout the years by harvesting that sap. It reinforces its process that helps the tree rejuvenate itself every year. So it's we have those teachings that say if we don't use something, it goes away, right? But kind of Western science tells us now, no, that's a proper practice. Just like maintaining a forest or any kind of plant or garden, you have to tend to it and pay attention to it and utilize it. So that would strengthen the health of the trees by harvesting the sap every year.
Anybody else have any questions on?
Drill them up.
All right, yeah. Drill up. Jeremy, can you bring over that hammer?
Yeah. So once he actually drills it, puts the spile in, you can come up, probably take a closer look. Rotate through and take a look at it, see how fast it's stripping out. And we can throw a bucket on there. We might be able to get two on there, right?
Yeah.
So as you get closer, you'll be able to see the previous spots where we tapped this tree last year. and probably even years before that, where somebody may have had this. Like I've been doing. They get it kind of low too for the kids. Maybe one here and one there.
It's important to remember too as you're drilling, you don't want to go straight in. You almost want to give it like a little bit of almost like you're drilling up just a hair, but really you want that sap. You want gravity to work. You want that sap to come out. That just assists with the sap coming out of the tree. So sometimes I like to look, make sure it's straight, and I'll just cut it down just a little bit. If anybody can see it, there's sap coming out now.
Right, you want to take a turn coming up closer, you can see that sap already filling right out of that hole.
You don't really want to go too deep into the tree, because once you go too deep, you can actually damage the tree. So really, it depends on the spile too. There's different size spiles out there. Like the ones we're using came from like a beginner's kit for maple for tapping for the sap. But like this one's a size 7/16 drill bit. There are some I know that require like a 5/16 drill bit. We do have extra buckets, and we do have we can get more too and spiles. So if you guys are interested in taking a couple buckets to take home and to tap yourself, or if you have family that has maple trees, you're more than welcome. We can give you some today, or can arrange for you to come and pick some up. But yeah, basically for this, back to the tapping, you really just like Buck was saying, just make sure that you're changing the spots. Fortunately for these trees that we've been using, we don't use them for the whole season, just more so for the club. So it gives these trees a little bit more time, like Buck was saying, to rejuvenate. So that's good to go. Another thing too is whatever trees that you're tapping, just check and make sure there's no poison ivy. I'm not sure everybody gets poison ivy. Sometimes around these trees. Oh, okay. These files aren't really heavy duty. These ones come from the beginners, but as you can tell, I didn't even tap that in yet. It's already coming through. That's just the pressure of that sap building and then filtering down through the spile. With these ones, with these files, some of them are different. You want to make sure that you put these hooks on that spile first before you tap it, because if you put it in there, you're gonna have to take it back out. And usually, you use like pliers to pull them out. Like I said, these ones aren't very heavy duty. With these files that aren't as heavy duty, I recommend using like a mallet. Yeah, use a rubber mallet. Wooden block. Or also a wooden block too, like just a piece of. Kind of want to secure it more into the tree, because if you get a full bucket, the weight of it actually might pull the spile out of the tree. You might even want to give it a tug too. Not a really hard tug, but just enough just to make sure it's secure. These buckets will just get onto the hook. And there's one.
I kind of want to.
Another tip too, like with these spiles, the kit recommended a 2.5 inches. So you can also tape your bit. So I taped this one at 2.5, just so I can tell as I'm drilling, I'm not drilling too far in. I know there was another spile that we had that it was like I think inch or inch and a half. So this depends on the size of your spile, and yeah, just to make sure you don't drill too far. Oh, yeah. There we go. And there we go.
So if you want to take a turn, come in and see, and see how fast it's already filling up. I mean, you can hear it dripping pretty fast already.
Yeah. Put a lid on here too, if you keep anything like falling off the tree, especially like birds, different stuff falling and coming off the trees, or so these caps will do that. Help keep it clear. You're gonna get bugs in there. That's kind of it's inevitable. That's gonna happen, but it's just more so you can filter those out after. I know there's a lot of people that will just drink straight out of the bucket. These are you can sanitize them with actually baking soda. Utilizing baking soda to clean the buckets. I know there's other ways too. There's some other ways that they can sanitize it. That they have.
Yeah, you can like use vinegar or baking soda or a combination just to sort of like rinse it out with a little cold water. Helps to clean it out instead of using any harsh detergent. Especially if you got stainless steel buckets or zinc anodized buckets. You don't want to wear off that outer coating with anything too harsh. And then you don't want that residue getting into your sap either. If you're collecting and you're rinsing it out and washing it out with dish soap or something, you just don't want to get it in your boilings.